I know you can't speak directly to Boehner's resignation. You have yet to publish on this. But if you consider the backdrop here, a fractious Republican Party, a wide-open GOP presidential race, a Democratic frontrunner who seems to be losing some steam, when you canvass all the geopolitical risks out there in this world, how big a deal is the divide in the U.S. government?
It's on the lower end, I have to say. It's part of the political cycle that we've been following for a few years. It did get quiet. I called it lather, rinse, repeat at the time. Could we go for another shutdown? Maybe. It's not till the end of this year, and judging by the way markets have looked at political developments, they probably won't worry about it until much closer to the time. But for now, it does add to the generalized uncertainty, and in a context where we have a lot to worry about with the China slowdown and what the Fed might do next, it doesn't help.
In the global context, people are talking about Boehner couldn't control his caucus. He wanted to, perhaps because he was too friendly with Obama and because there was a more radical wing. Would you put what's happening with Boehner and the rest of his party in sort of part of the broader pattern of Jeremy Corbyn and all these other parties where sort of radicals are taking over?
Well, I put it in the context of this umbrella concept of political fragmentation. You have fragmentation within the Republican Party, right? Who's more Republican, who's more conservative, who's more orthodox? And of course, we're heading into an election year, so everybody's out to, do the chest beating of credentials, the funding or defunding of Planned Parenthood, now folded into the debate. Every time there's a slight variation. But I think that as much as Wall Street has started to price in these sort of shenanigans from Washington, we ought to remember that Ronald Reagan raised the debt ceiling how many times? 13 times when he was in office. This is relatively new, and it is a sign of our much more fractious political times.
How many questions do you get from your clients on the possibility of a President Trump?
Well, being based in London and talking to global investors, traveling as I do, the rest of the world is utterly confounded by our political culture and say, tell me, Tina, is it really possible that we could have a President Trump? And at that point, I explain what the dynamics are. But I'm glad that you raised the point about Jeremy Corbyn, who was just elected Labour leader, because I think that us kind of metropolitan global elite types think this kind of thing can be funny. It is political theater, but it's not, there are a few data points in this trend, right? And part of it is people are willing to consider leaders who they know are not electable. And the data tell us this. People understand that that these people may never make it into office. But one of the reasons why we see their rise in the polls is because they reinforce the views that people hold themselves.
Okay, I just want to pin you down for a second. You say unelectable, and people ask you what are the odds. For someone like Trump becoming president or Corbyn becoming prime minister, how small of a chance are we talking about? In your mind, is it like 1%, or is it maybe closer to 10% or 20%?
You have very different political systems.
Right.
We're not going to have elections in the UK again, most likely for 5 years. 5 years is an eternity in politics. In the US case, it's interesting because if you had asked sort of Washington pundits a couple of months ago, they would have said never, no chance. Now they're all backpedaling, right? And saying, well, you can imagine statistically how it could come about. Most people, the Washington insider types, will say he'll divide the party, makes it more likely for a Democrat. That's probably right. But again, I think the thing to take away is how it is that Trump can break all the rules of campaigning, and people love it. The same with Corbyn. These messages that he was made the center of his campaign really didn't go together. And yet the man has just been elected leader by a landslide. What is going on there?